Hi there, I'm Jen, this is Remembered Reads, and this was originally going to be a vlog of the Fold Canada Festival of Literary Diversity, the Saturday panels, but I'm not very good at vlogging. I will share some of the video that I took during that day, but I thought I'd share what the event was about because I've posted a bit of this online and I had a couple of people mention to me that one, that they didn't know that that was happening or they would have gone, and secondly that they weren't sure what exactly it was about. So I thought I'd share some of that in case people are interested, because I know there are a number of GTA area people on BookTube who might especially be interested, and I thought it might be generally kind of interesting. As the name Festival of Literary Diversity implies, the general theme of the event is exactly what it says on the tin. The event started on Thursday evening, I believe, and it ran all day Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I went to some of the Saturday events. On the Saturday they had 3 main tracks, one of which was a series of author panels, which is what I went to. They also had a series of panels aimed at writers, which involved a lot of idea generation and also I think some publishing tips. Again, I didn't go to those ones, so I don't know the specifics of it. And there was also a teen track that ran all day as well that was aimed at teenagers. And again, because I didn't go to that, I don't know a lot of the details, although there were some people at the evening events who mentioned that their kids were at the teen track and were really enjoying it, so there we go. I will go through a list of the different panels that I went to. The first panel that I went to in the morning was called Imagination, and it was basically a discussion of speculative or science fiction writing. Interestingly, even though that was the first panel of the day, and I think probably had one of the smaller groups in attendance, that actually ended up having more questions from the audience. At most of the panels, there was a question and answer period at the end where the facilitator, I think I recorded the introduction for that session, so I will insert that in here.
Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee nations. This weekend and going forward, we invite you to think about your role on this land. We all benefit from this stolen land.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us so early in the morning. I'm glad some of you are still a little, maybe I'm not ready to learn anything new. That's okay, that's okay. Welcome, thank you so much. Something that was said yesterday by Jill that really struck me was that they were not only acknowledging the diverse authors that represent this country and beyond, but also the diversity of their readers. And so it's wonderful to look into the audience and see people who usually have numerous barriers to being part of literary festivals be here and be present, be welcome, acknowledged. And so I see you, I celebrate you, I acknowledge you. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so let me read their bios because I am so honored to be in their presence today to talk about science fiction and speculative fiction. So we have here in the middle with a very cool onesie on is Whitney French, is a writer and arts educator and the editor of the collection Black Writers Matter, published with the University of Regina Press. She is also the founder and co-editor of the nationwide publication from the Root Zine, as well as the founder of the workshop series Writing While Black. Let's give it up for Whitney French! And to my right, it's like when it's this early in the morning, like I'm all jokes. Yeah. Marissa Lai has authored 6 books, including Saltfish Girl and The Tiger Flu, recipient of an Australia Award and finalist for the Books in Canada First Novel Award, the Tiptree Award and Sunburst Award, the W. Mitchell Award, the B.P. Nicol Chapbook Award, the Dorothy Livesey Prize, and the Gabriel Boyd Prize. She holds a Canada Research Chair at the University of Calgary, where she directs the Insurgent Architects House for Creative Writing. No big deal, right? Give it up for Larissa Lai! Today, Wagisha Rice is an author and a journalist originally from Wasauksing First Nation on Georgian Bay. His most recent novel, Moon of the Crusted Snow, was published by ECW Press in late 2018. He's also the author of the novel Legacy and the short story collection Midnight Sweat Lodge. He currently works as the host of Up North, CBC Radio 1's afternoon show for Northern Ontario. He lives in Sudbury with his wife and son. Give it up for Wapige!
But it was a good way to start the morning. The second morning session that I went to was titled My Body is an Activist, and with the subheading Nonfiction Writing That Reacts and Resists. And that panel, I thought, was interestingly broad-ranging because it was dealing with disability, deafness, and gender identity physicality, I guess, which was interesting. That panel is actually the reason I found out about this, because after I had read Adam Pottle's The Bus, I had went and Googled him to see what else he'd written, and I saw that he was at this event, which is WAND, and then I noticed that a bunch of other authors that I've read over the past year were also speaking at this event, so that is actually the reason I found out about it. I can't remember what specifically I recorded for that one. I feel like I probably recorded something, so I will insert that in.
Finally, we want to welcome Adam. Adam Pottle's writing explores the fiery beauty of deafness and disability. He has published poetry, fiction, and nonfiction, and has had 2 plays produced. He has published 4 books in total, a poetry collection called Beautiful Mutants, a novel, Antis Dreams, a novella, The Bus, and his most recent voice, a memoir and craft exploration, and he lives in Saskatoon. Please welcome Adam. Writers at the Fold. We have language is such a site of our struggles, right? We work in this crafting of language that oftentimes seeks to erase us. And what you've done in your craft is not just to resist, but to create new ways of materializing us. What does it mean for you, for your craft to be language?
As the day went on, I found myself recording less and less of the events. For one thing, at one point, the official photographer stood in front of me, and I think a lot of this will probably be up on the official site somewhere, so that might be worth looking to if you're actually looking to. That might be worth looking for if you're interested in seeing what actually happened at the panel. The first afternoon panel that I went to was titled The World is Here, Novels Navigating Love and Conflict. This one was interesting in that a lot of the writers on this panel had written very serious literary fiction, and then one of them was Uzma Jalaluddin, who was talking about her kind of fluffy romantic comedy Pride and Prejudice retelling Aisha at Last, which I really enjoyed. I think I talked about that back in December, and I thought it was a great fun book, and also it's set in the neighborhood that I grew up in, so I really enjoyed it on that basis. But a lot of the other authors were talking about really serious socio-political issues in their books, and it was funny to have that, to have something so fluffy lumped in with that. I think I recorded part of one of Sharon Bala's, the author of The Boat People, if you remember, that was on the Canada Reads list last year, I think. Anyway, I think I recorded one of her responses, so I will insert that in here.
And in terms of your personal connection or the influence that came there, were all of those borders within you, or did that automatically relate to maybe one of those experiences and the others came on after?
So I'm really interested in, I guess, people often ask writers, where's the autobiography in the novel? And they don't ask it in that way, they ask, which character is most like you, or how much of you is in this novel? And for me, I always think the autobiography in anyone's writing is the themes that they keep circling around. And so for me, it's identity, which again has to do with who are you, where are you from? Identity and belonging and secrets, and families always have secrets. But for me, really, the genesis of this novel was recognizing that, so it's inspired by the arrival of 2 real ships which came from Sri Lanka in 2009 and 2010 to Vancouver Island, and on board were Tamil refugees. My family is from Sri Lanka, I'm half Tamil, and when I was hearing in the news about these ships coming, I was thinking about how fortunate I was to be in Canada, to be a citizen, to be on this side of that border, and how easily it could have been different. And so it was really thinking about the life I didn't have to live, and how easily it could have been the opposite, how easily I could have been on that boat.
There was an afternoon session that was called Educate Me, which had the subheading Creating Lifelong Readers. And you would expect that that would be aimed more at encouraging younger children to read, but what it ended up being was the three authors who were the panelists for that one were a college professor, a university professor, and a high school teacher. So it ended up being more about influences on older students, which I thought was very interesting, but it wasn't really in line with the way this was described in the material, so I thought that was a little bit odd. The final thing that I went to was then the Indigenous Showcase, which had 4 authors plus a facilitator, but it also had more of a show, because in each of the sessions they had writers, the writers were reading from their work, but in this one, those readings were presented as a first piece and mixed in with a poet doing some spoken word work. They had an elder doing a smudging to open it up, and there was some hoop dancing and flute playing in the middle. So that was more of a performance piece, and then they had the question and answer period with the facilitator at the end, so it was separated into 2 pieces and was quite a bit longer than the other panels. And this took place after the other events in the other venues had ended, so this was quite a bit more crowded than the other ones, because I think people who had been at the writers' pieces, there was also a short play that was performed, so people who had gone to that rather than panels were coming into this, I think. As an aside, maybe they didn't take audience questions, so it was all facilitator questions in that one. There was also a poetry reading by a number of poets that took place after this, but this ended nearly at 9 o'clock, and I had a distance to drive because this took place in Brampton, to the northwest of Toronto, if you know the area, and the poetry piece was going to end around 11 o'clock. But it looked like it was interesting, and I think there were quite a few people who were staying for that event. All of the panels that I went to were in the Rose Theatre, which is quite a nice facility. I had never been in there before, and to my surprise, the parking was free, so that was nice. There were, I believe, 3 other venues that events were held at. As I said, I didn't see any of them. If I were to have a complaint about any of it, it would be that the book signings were scheduled in these breaks that meant it was kind of a natural time to leave to grab food. So it was a bit of a dilemma of, do you get lunch or do you get your book signed? And on the lunch break, I thought maybe they'll still be there if I come back after I go and grab food. And they were not still there after I grabbed food. So I thought it was definitely worth going to. I'm not always the biggest fan of hearing authors talk about their work, but I know a lot of other people are, and I think a lot of this was discussing social issues slightly harder than it was discussing literary issues, which I think made it more palatable to me, because a lot of literary discussions I always find a little cringeworthy, which is just me, and I know that there are other people who would prefer the balance to go the other direction, so that would maybe be something to keep in mind if your interests lie on the other side of that. Oh, since I know a lot of people like to know, did you get any stuff for going to things like this? And because it was sponsored by Audible, they had people from Audible giving out credits for free audiobooks. So yes, that was stuff. Also, they didn't make you recycle the lanyards, so I did get to keep the lanyard. And I did buy some stuff because I figured you might as well support an event like that. So I got this tote bag, which I think was $5. Realized I have the program in here. The program actually includes articles and short stories and some poetry, so it's a bit of a book on its own, which I thought was very entertaining. I was fully expecting this to just be a rundown of what's happening each day and maybe biographies of the authors and facilitators, as I said, are also all authors. But no, there's actually reading material in here, so that was nice. Oh, and there was also a panel selling books by the authors who were the facilitators and panelists. I had actually read a lot of what they were offering, so I didn't shop as much, so it probably didn't matter as much that I didn't get things signed. But I did take some film of that, so I'll insert that. I did buy one book. I bought Adam Pottle's memoir because my library hasn't had this in yet. I'm sure they will eventually. And I also felt like I ought to be buying at least one book while I was there. Actually, did I buy 2? I also bought this collection of short stories, Shut Up, You're Pretty, which is actually by one of the authors who was at the Sunday events, which I didn't go to, but I had never heard of this one before, whereas almost every other book on the table I had either read or at least heard of and knew I could have access to. So I thought I would pick that up just because the newness of it made it more appealing. But yeah, overall I thought it was a worthy event. The Saturday pass was $55, I think. And if you think of the number of hours of entertainment you get out of that compared to going to a play, which is only a couple of hours, because I did end up being there basically 12 hours, although the events themselves were only about half of that. Still, yeah, I thought it was worthwhile. I would go again if I'm still in the region next year. So if anybody was there and you went to other panels, I'd love to hear what you thought of it. And if you have similar events where you are, I'd love to hear about that. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.